That's passive income all about, or is something else?
It's a pretty emotionally charged topic.
Jay Melone is the founder of Passive Profits.
Imposter syndrome hits us because I'm not that person that's been doing it for 10,000 hours or 10 years or however long. Then I have no right to sell anything that I've learned along the way. But then you're 10 years ahead of the person behind you.
Jay teach you how to earn passive income by packaging your knowledge into no-code digital products like courses, eBooks, and templates.
You're there for a reason, to build networks, to sell your products, to sell yourself, to be up in line for a promotion so that people know about your knowledge, your expertise. That's selling. That's marketing. None of that would be possible unless they trusted me. That's really the shift from just being an expert to being an entrepreneur is
Hey, I'm your host, Jay Marushka with the Nomad Solopreneur Show. Quick one before the episode starts. About 80% of you watching, you didn't hit that follow or subscribe button. If you get any value from this, if the stories we share and the learnings that you get from my guests help you or your business in any way, can you please do me a favor and hit that follow or subscribe button? It helps the show more than you can even imagine. And the bigger the show gets, the better the guest gets. Thank you so much and enjoy the episode. Hey Jay, welcome to the Nomad Solopreneur Show.
Hey Gabe, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
My pleasure, especially because it's the dream of everyone to make money while asleep. That's passive income all about, or is something else?
Yeah, it's a pretty emotionally charged topic, but that is the dream. And it is real, but there's a lot to unpack behind it, especially for people that haven't experienced it yet. I think there's a lot of hesitation that people have around the term passive income. It feels impossible. It feels out of reach. It feels a little scammy because nothing is quite passive, of course. But when you put in the work to however it is that you manage to make money, that you're not actively showing up and doing a thing over and over again, that was one of the big impetus behind why I decided to build Passive Profits.
Yeah, good point indeed. Unfortunately, because of fake gurus and people that just want to make a quick buck and scamming others, it's quite a bad reputation in the industry. We all know that you can actually make money without being present there through online courses or other types of info products and such. But if you were to create a definition for passive income, what that will be?
I think it's easier to think about the opposite of passive income, which is active income. So before I started this company today, Passive Profits, I spent 14 years building a consulting business. And before then, I had a job. I had a 9-to-5 for 10 years before then. I was a consultant for 6 years working at Accenture. So all that time leading up until today, I had to show up. I had to do the work that I did as a software engineer, then as a product manager, a lot of like knowledge work. So it always required me to be present with a team or with my clients, my customers. And I had to do a thing in order to achieve certain outcomes, to help groups make decisions, to find great ideas, to build products and take them to market. And after doing that for over 2 decades, you start to burn out. You can change topics, you can change jobs, you can work at a different company, you can go out of a company and do it for yourself. But if at the end of the day, you as a person need to be in front of a group of people, or just you're constantly kind of hustling as an individual consultant, it catches up with you. So I'm 48. And my working assumption is people in their late 30s and 40s, they start to think about what would it look like for me to start to get paid where I can enjoy more of my life. You know, you have your kids are growing up at that age. If you have kids, you want a vacation, you want to enjoy your life. And even if you're making a lot of money, when you're earning it in an active format, you kind of get robbed of being able to take advantage of that. I mean, like the most infamous case for me was when I worked at Accenture, they gave us 6 weeks of vacation. On average, I'd use 2 days out of the year. I didn't own Accenture. I had a strong work ethic, but I was just always busy. And I always felt like I was going to be behind because I always had all this work to do. So I'd take 2 days out of the year. I'd get paid for the unused vacation days. Like after years and years of doing that and not going on vacation, not enjoying my life, and then taking that work ethic into my own business, after a while, you're just like, what am I doing? So passive in that sense is something that's not active. It's building a thing. Like you said, you could build a digital product, an info product, an online course. You could, even if you like recorded coaching that you've done with other people, and then you made it accessible to other people that were trying to achieve the same thing, that coaching client, but you do a bunch of work to package it up and then you make it available to other people. And in that sense, that is very passive, but it takes a lot of work in order to package and productize and do all the things required so that people can access it while you're sleeping, perhaps.
Yeah, true. And on that note, because people probably think that, oh, there's not such thing as passive income because you actually need to put in the work to build that stream. But if you break it down like that, of course there is, because after you build something, you went all those years, had all that experience, build some knowledge that you are able to pack after that. And the bad reputation in industry is because people say, you don't need experience, you don't need that, you don't need that. You just take my course and you can make money while asleep, which of course is bullshit. It's not true. You cannot do that. But if you have some knowledge, and everyone has, no matter your experience, you can pack that. And that's what I wanted to ask. How do you notice or spot things that might be valuable to others in order to be able to pack it in a way that it's sellable?
So Malcolm Gladwell, he wrote the book on 10,000 hours to mastery. And in any profession or job or role that you've done, there's always that person that's been doing it 10 years longer than you. And they're the person that you've looked up to. And when you think about, I could never compete with that person, I think that we have all these sort of like imposter syndrome hits us, that because I'm not that person that's been doing it for 10,000 hours or 10 years or however long, then I have no right to sell anything that I've learned along the way. But then you're 10 years ahead of the person behind you. And so, like that, thinking about it from more of a spectrum, how could I help the person a few steps behind me? I think that's the right mindset. Instead of getting so caught up in, I'm not the quintessential leader in my field, I'm not the number one person, because there's such a big world and so many people are at different stages. I heard an analogy. If you're trying to learn how to play basketball, you don't go to Michael Jordan. You go to the kid that's on your team that's been playing a couple of years longer than you, or you go to your coach that is there to teach kids that are first learning to play basketball. And that person is sort of like an expert in your opinion. You're trying to be able to dribble the ball as well as that kid, or as well as the coach shows the kids how to dribble. So even with like social posts, you and I are active on LinkedIn and Twitter and places like that. Constantly you're thinking like, what could I talk about today that would be helpful to somebody else? And you get lost in all of the things that you learned yourself during the week that were like, oh, that's so helpful. Good thing that I was able to figure that out. That's something that somebody else is probably working on and trying to figure out as well. So you have to almost short circuit. One easy way to do that is just taking a lot of notes on the things that you are learning, the tools that you're using, the breakthroughs that you've had, something that you learned from somebody else. So like I listen to your podcast, I listen to Amy Porterfield's, Jay Klaus, Justin Welsh. I have so many sources of input for things that I'm learning. And sometimes while I'm listening, I'm like, I figured that out last year. I didn't realize that other people cared about that topic. There's a woman I follow on LinkedIn. Her name's Wendy Froho. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name. She nailed this, like just take lots of notes on what's actually happening. And there's always some gems in there. And the more that you share them with people and you kind of like, you're in pods with people and you have accountability partners, those are so helpful because people are asking you questions about things. And those are probably moments that you could educate and teach.
Exactly. And always others are a gold mine for this information, because those questions, especially if they repeat themselves and you see patterns, that's the gold. That's the thing that you probably should think of. Oh, there's an interest there. I can probably, if I know the answer or solution to that, I can provide. And something on that note that I advise my clients is to actually, the exact thing that you mentioned, to take notes and document everything, especially if you keep repeating some steps in the ways you help someone. That's literally the roadmap, the blueprint that you can help others few steps behind. The imposter syndrome is real. Everyone is dealing with it, no matter the level. And the way you put it is so smart, because anyone that's just few steps behind, you can help, even if it's advice whatever is consulting or a service or whatever your thing is, you can help them. And anything you can help someone with, you can package it. And on that note, especially on online digital products, people fear that it's hard to sell them if they don't know marketing, if they don't know how to package a thing. What would be the easier way to do it for someone that doesn't have marketing expertise?
Yeah. And I hear this a lot. I'm not a marketer. I don't know how to sell. You brought up a good point that I don't want to lose track. You mentioned like the gurus that mislead us. And I think a lot of us looking at digital marketing and online businesses and passive income, digital products like that, there are plenty of courses that are complete crap. And I think we look at that and we say, I don't want to be that person. And you assume that anything that's not perfect out of the gate, you're going to be that used car salesman kind of feeling. So I think it's just going back to your next question about imposter syndrome and not being able to sell. I think all of us are already selling, but we get hung up on selling that leads to dollars. But there's so much other selling that we're already doing. There's so much marketing that we're already doing. There's a billion people on LinkedIn. And if we're being honest, people are there to market themselves. I don't think LinkedIn is like this big party that you enjoy spending 3 hours a day on 5 days a week. You're there for a reason, to build networks, to sell your products, to sell yourself, to be up in line for a promotion so that people know about your knowledge, your expertise. That's selling. That's marketing. And I read a book a long time ago by Jen Sincero. It's called You Are a Badass at Making Money. Sounds kind of like kitschy or whatever, but felt 100% validated that I had this really strange relationship with money. And so when it came time for me to start my consulting business, where I was selling my team's time and my time, and then like products and tools that we started to create, same thing happened for me. I was like, who am I to sell this thing? But along the way, I was able to get people in the door. I found prospective customers without like massive case studies. I sold our first customers. I eventually started selling to companies like Ford and MailChimp and Home Depot. And all along the way, I was like, I'll never be able to sell to those companies. But I was already selling to other business leaders that had started their own smaller businesses. I had built a LinkedIn following. Before that, I had sold in getting myself a job and getting myself promoted. So I think like the switch in our heads about selling that directly leads to charging for whatever we're selling, there's something that feels different in there where we just feel unjustified in doing that. So I think it's important to look back at all of the things that you're already marketing and selling about yourself. And then from there, it's just building the habit. I just talked with someone right before we jumped on, and she said almost exactly what you said, Gabe. She said, I'm not a marketer. I'm working on how to sell. I don't want to be the face of the company kind of thing. And I was like, I've said this exact same thing for a decade. And really, it just comes with the practice of putting yourself a little bit further ahead, because at the end of the day, good or bad or indifferent of how you think about it, customer is going to buy from you. At some point, you probably want to like decouple yourself from the brand so that if you want to sell the company, it doesn't require you to be with it. So the more you can just get comfortable putting yourself in front of your customers, talking with them, sharing content, thinking about all the things that you've already done to market and sell yourself, you'll probably be a little bit more comfortable with the idea of charging for whatever you're selling.
That's so true, Jay. And especially because at the end of the day, selling is just helping, if you reframe it like that. And with that practice of talking to your prospects, your customers, you end up in a position in which you don't have to per se sell. You'll just present your solution or finding ways to help them in a way that's not sleazy. And of course, it's all the history that we're carrying with us from the probably 80s or 90s, where the sleazy salesmen who are doing a wrong reputation to sales. But today, everyone, no matter what they do, in a way or another, they market themselves. And you mentioned something strong there, putting yourself out there, building a personal brand. How powerful is that when it comes to building a passive income and selling your knowledge?
Yeah. I know people may not want to hear this. And for whatever reason, I'm not sure why the term personal brand is getting beat up right now on social media. I don't know if it's just an old term. What I do know is that the audience that I built on LinkedIn as my primary sort of like discovery platform has all come from me putting helpful information out into the world. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to always think about how can I decrease my prospective customers' time to value so that eventually they know me, they trust me, they see that I've been helping them like take the baby steps until they're ready to buy something that's fairly inexpensive or something that's a little bit more expensive. But none of that would be possible unless they trusted me. And that trust, the way that I establish that trust is first, I bring awareness of who I am on LinkedIn or Twitter, maybe in the future. And then once I get someone to kind of follow along with my content and they're indicating to me that they're interested, they're finding the stuff valuable, then I will start more of a relationship with them through a DM. I'll tell them about where I write more of the things that they're interested in, my newsletter. Once I have them in my email newsletter, now I can really open up. I can share deep insights about the things that I'm learning about, the things that I find valuable, the things that they'll probably find valuable. And all along the way, a person may be in that relationship with me for a year or so until I present them with something that is timely, that they need. And now they've learned to trust me over that time and they buy. But the foundation to all of that is who I come across as a person that you can trust online. Am I an authentic Jay Melone or am I some shitty car salesman once you come into my ecosystem where I start to sling lots of products at you and try to oversell you? So maintaining that authenticity and that trust all along the process, because for some of us, that customer journey is really long. There's a woman I'm coaching. She does real estate sales. And so think about how often you buy a house. Every few years, maybe every decade. So she needs to build authority and trust with that person for a really long time and keep them, nurture them in her ecosystem and her email newsletters and all the things that she offers for a super long time. And then just stay top of mind so that when they're ready to buy a house, they reach out to her.
Yeah, we need to think. If someone is not ready to buy at that exact moment, that doesn't mean that in few months or years won't be arriving at that point that they're ready to buy, ready to get help. And we cannot know. Of course, we can ask questions and identify that. But if someone is just following us, just absorbing that content, consuming what we share, it's almost impossible without talking to them to know exactly when they're ready. So just putting ourselves out there in front of them every single day will build that trust. And speaking of trust, it's also a very used word. Apart from providing help, value, and something that actually can move the needle for them in the right direction, what trust actually is and what are some trust factors that we can rely on when we are putting our services or products out there?
My way of building relationships and sharing a lot of the content that I do, it's that sort of build in public format. I've always been a fan of it. I still remember a decade ago when the guys who own Buffer, the social media sort of curation platform, they publicly shared their salaries, which is like the ultimate version of sharing, like showing your work and building in public. And I just thought it was like, I was like, wow, at a time where Glassdoor and all these sort of like salary.com, like I still had a job at the time and I was wondering like, how much can I make if I get promoted? And seeing them do that, it always stuck with me as a version of just being like so vulnerable. So like some of my most engaged with content has been struggles that I've been through. And I think people definitely gamify the whole struggle thing. Every other post is, I made these 10 mistakes. I failed at this thing. And it gets a little washed out. But there's something that like people have that they can pick up on the authenticity of someone sharing to share versus someone sharing to, get extra clicks and engagement. So that vulnerability goes a long way. Like showing people, I think scratching your own itch is a great place to operate, because if you're solving a problem that you experienced yourself and you're telling people the problem you went through, the thing that you were trying to solve, the outcome that you were trying to achieve, how you got there, that's sort of like how I approach versus the how-to approach. I think it just always resonates well with people. And pairing like it's almost like the format of how you build in public. You just tell people, this is what I'm trying to do. I screwed up these 3 places. This is what I solved for it. Just today, we were in a LinkedIn newsletter webinar yesterday, and great questions came up. Yours was one of them. And, like I took those and I put them back out and said, here are 3 of my favorite questions. Your question, Gabe, that you asked, I was like, I couldn't answer this question about duplicated content. Who else knows? Like I'm quick to say, I don't know. I'm figuring it out. And I think that raw version is super powerful. I hear like a lot of video content creators now are like ditching the fancy setup with like video and lighting and mics and stage setups and green screens and all that. And they're going back to the sort of like very raw video capture. Even like Mr. Beast is not spending $1 million per shoot. He's trying to make it a little bit more authentic. So I don't know. Authenticity is hard to teach someone how to be. I do think people can sniff it out. But for me, that sort of like authentic, build in public version is how I guess I've been able to establish trust with people.
I really like that approach. The perfect example that you gave from that webinar, you literally put together, we grab those questions and share with others today. Every single time we experience something and is valuable or relevant to what you want to share, we can put that out there. And of course, staying real, not sharing, as you mentioned, just for the sake of it. And I'd like to ask you something, because I know that you made over 18,000 in passive income from your products. How did you scratch your own itch to create those? If you can unpack that process for those listening or watching, because I think that would be super valuable.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm doing it right now for my current business, but I'll tell the story of how I discovered the toolkits that I built for my other. So I have 2 companies. One is Passive Profits, and I have another that's 15 years old called New Haircut. And in that work, I was doing a lot of product management and product strategy. So companies pay me to come in and help do research and build prototypes and test their new ideas with the market. It's a lot of like deep knowledge work, requires a lot of expertise. At some point, AI will probably replace all that. So I'll have to figure that out. But I was doing that work for over a decade. So before the pandemic, I was on planes a lot. I was flying mostly all over the country, but even in other parts of Europe and whatnot. And I would meet with teams and I would run these programs, these sort of like very intense sprints that would go for a week. And then I'd go back and I'd do some research and synthesis. I'd bring it back to the team. We do another round of research and prototyping. Very intense for me, for sure, because not only am I doing the work, but I'm performing. I'm a facilitator. I'm a sort of cat herder. I'm keeping people engaged in those sessions. It takes a ton of energy to do that work in person or virtually. And in 2021, I really started to fizzle out. And I started asking myself the question of what would it look like for me to not have to show up and do this work? Is there a way that I could teach people? So for a while, I was doing training workshops where I was like, I'll teach you everything I know so you and your team can do it yourself. The training I could do in 2 or 3 days versus 2 months or 2 weeks or however long my consulting practice worked. So I was looking at the sort of like the very intense, active ways that I was making income. And I started to take pieces of it out and turn it into training materials. At the time, like online courses were a thing. This was 4 years ago. So they were definitely a thing, but I think they've just grown in popularity over the years. And so I was teaching in like public formats. I was doing like ticketed events. Then I was doing virtual events where I was teaching parts of my methods and frameworks. And what I noticed was that the ROI on that went way up. So I'm just going to make up some numbers. If I got paid $50,000 to do an 8-week long program that I was consulting, I would make nearly the same in a couple days. These are with like corporate clients by just teaching them what I knew in 2 or 3 days. So not only was my time, I was winning back my time, but the money was really great. And then I was asking more. So like the training workshops still required me to perform. And I was like, okay, if I was able to productize and package inside of training that I'm doing, what would it look like for me to give that training without me there? And people had asked me, can we have the slides that you mentioned earlier about like questions or where the gold are? So whenever I was training, people would ask me about specific things that they were getting hung up on. They would ask, can we have the slides? Can we have that template? What about that script, that interview script that you showed us how to do? Do you have a template for that? And for a long time, I was like, no, that's all my training IP. I own it. You only paid this thing. You don't get access to all that. And then I started asking myself, like, well, why? Why don't I just give it to people in a way that I can sell it? And eventually, it took me a few years to figure this out. So don't put a lot of pressure on yourself that you have to flip a switch and figure this out overnight. But over iterating and iterating, I eventually found a way that I could package that inside of a course. I called it a toolkit, inside of a course that taught people everything I knew about the framework or the methodology, and then gave them everything: my slides, my guides, my templates, all the resources, all the things that I had learned that were helpful for me learning the methodology. And I packaged it inside of a toolkit that I sold for a couple $100. And people bought it because what I was doing was I completely disrupted the process of having to hire a consultant, which is a very long process. And then I come in, I do my thing, and it might be months until what you paid me, you get the results from. So all those hoops that people have to jump through, the time it takes, paying me the fees that I charge to do the thing that I do, which are not cheap. Now for $200, you can have everything I've learned and you could do it yourself. And that felt like the greatest sort of like value that I could offer the world, especially at the price point that I was doing it at. It scared me to give away something that I had spent 10 years figuring out and sell it for $200. And for a while, I went back and forth. I was like, oh my God, no, I can't sell these anymore. And I'd hide them. But what I noticed over time, you saw that I've sold $80,000 worth of those toolkits. It keeps going up. The last one I built was 3 years ago, and I still wake up to Stripe notifications that someone bought it. But what I noticed, the really like interesting thing for me and for the consultants and coaches that are listening, the really interesting thing is that many of the toolkit customers became my sort of like premium coaching and consulting customers. And so like the sale, I demonstrated value. I definitely established trust as like an expert in this field. And then they would go on to ask me to come in and teach their teams to just run the method because they would get stuck at certain points, or they just didn't trust themselves enough. And so they would hire me to come in and do it. But now they were pre-sold. So I didn't have to like hustle and pitch and do these like insane RF processes, which are just a total nightmare. They were coming in and saying, hey, I bought your toolkit. It was amazing. We used it for this thing. We want to do it again, but we'd love for you to do it this time around for us. Cool. So for $200, they found it, they used it, they got some value, and now they pay me 5 or 6 figures to come and do the thing that I really offered them in the toolkit. It was a huge light bulb moment for me.
Information is cheap, but implementation is the one that actually people pay for more. And to break up the whole process that you went through, so provide all that one-on-one done for them, then you realize that, holy shit, this is a lot of energy and time-consuming thing. Let's package it in something that is manageable to actually teach them, consult them, and they do the implementation. And then package it further in an online course. And funny enough, that's kind of the process that I'm going through right now. So I go from the execution side of things, which I kind of get off it last year. I still doing, but partially, and do the consulting side of things one-on-one. And my approach would be, and I love your feedback on that, because a lot of those that I'm talking to are going kind of to the same process. I plan to record a short video before every session because I have one-on-one live session for 10 weeks every Monday. And they go implement what I told them, and they get back to me for feedback. Then we jump on the next session and so on. And what I plan to do now is to record a short video before every session. So we save a lot of time and actually get into hands-on help during the session. And of course, after that, take all those videos because everyone is going through the same process. Take all those videos and package it as a separate online course. And another idea that I have is to bring multiple people together in a cohort style round to see if they can actually implement it by themselves with ease without one-on-one approach that I have right now, but rather one-to-many. So that's kind of the process that I'm going through right now. Of course, it will take some time to package it up and doing passively, but we'd love to hear your thoughts on that and any suggestions that you might have.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea that you're doing. Like the way that you describe it with my product background, what I think of it as is you're building all of your material. And I think we lose sight of that. We're like, okay, if I'm going to build a course, I've got to begin, I've got to create everything. But in reality, you're meeting with your team, or you're running a webinar to teach like a small thing, or you have guides that you use to do the job that you do. You have all this material that you're actually sitting on already. You just don't think about it in a way of packaging it so that somebody else could look at it, understand it, and use it. That's really the shift from just being an expert to being an entrepreneur, is taking the stuff that you are already doing and making it self-paced, that somebody can take it and be off and running with it. So like, I love that what you're doing with it. You know that you need to meet with these people. You know that you're going to give them value. And then you could take the recordings from that and make it available to others. There's another guy that does this. His name's Justin. His last name is escaping me. He teaches people how to attract brand sponsors specifically for like your newsletter or sort of like your media business. And he decided to do is coach publicly big names, sort of like creator influencers, Caitlin Burgoyne, Amanda Getz, maybe Justin Welsh, Jay Klaus. And he put those on his YouTube channel publicly. So he's offering free coaching to those people. They're getting tremendous value because he's not charging for them. They're getting brand exposure. He's getting brand exposure, plus he's demonstrating his expertise. And people like myself are finding him on YouTube and watching it and taking pages of notes for when I want to like bring in brand sponsors. And then who am I going to call when I need to like really go deep and make sure that my brand sponsorship offer is dialed in? Justin, of course. So like literally everyone wins in the process. It's perfect. So I really like what you're doing. What I also tell people is, they're like, well, I've never taught live. I've never charged for this kind of thing. I'm like, cool. So then just do a 1-hour webinar where you give everything away for free for like the one module that you take out of what's going to become your course or your book or whatever it is, and just teach it for free. And at the end of it, make sure there's a connection to like the thing that you eventually want to sell. And you get people in your wheelhouse. They start to trust you. It's exactly the session that I did yesterday. But like, you're always generating content. It's just taking it and putting it into a form that other people can use in action. And then you can eventually sell that.
Yeah, absolutely. We sit on a lot of data, a lot of resources that we use on a daily basis with our clients, but we don't actually package it in any way. And it's just sitting around getting dust and not being used, of course, with the exception of the one-on-one help. But in order to make that passive, to make an income that is not relying on active work, we have to find a way. And what would be the easier way to go about it when it comes to packaging it?
It's a great question. I think about it a lot. Like, what would this look like if it were easy? That's a question I ask myself a lot. What's not easy is where you're going to be 3 years from now, where you have a brand, you have a series of products that you sell a membership to. Like, those are things like when you look at somebody like an Amy Porterfield that's been at this for 14 years, she's like the online class. She really is a guru. She worked with Tony Robbins. She's been doing this for over a decade. She has a number of products and programs. You can pay into her membership to get access to all those things. It's a whole ecosystem. I covered like another woman, Julia McCoy, who's been doing it in like the sort of like content marketing space. She's written books. She has like all these things that she's built up. I think like I look at that and I'm like, I'll never get there. It's the mountain that you're looking up at. But it's a great question you're asking, because there's so many like smaller, simple things that you can do. And then you look back at it in a couple of years and you're like, oh, I have this lead magnet, this book, this ebook, this little template I made, all these things that you can start to like almost give away to bring people into your system where they start to buy your paid products. So like the simple things for me, like an email-based course. I think like I enjoy writing. I'm a very slow writer, but I've been writing for a long time and I'm already writing. So like I have a newsletter that I write. It goes out weekly. All I did maybe 3 months ago was I turned on a switch in my Beehive email newsletter that certain people, if they want, they can pay $10 a month to get a little bit additional value out of my newsletter that I'm already writing. That's probably one of the simplest ways that you can start monetizing. It's also, there's this switch that happens for us. The first dollars that we make, it's a massive leap where you're like, someone else on the internet is willing to pay me $1 or more for the things that I'm creating already. And it's just this like massive win that you have for yourself. You're not a millionaire, but you're like, holy shit, I can actually make money doing the thing that I'm already doing. So like I write a newsletter. I turned on a premium subscription for it. I've got a handful of people that pay for the content that I'm already writing. I think that's the simplest thing that you could turn on. An email-based course is another one that I've been looking at pretty intently because I already have, I'm about to publish my 30th newsletter edition. There's some like significant deep dives in there, like up to a few thousand words. I've got a lot of stuff that if I took it and packaged it inside of a course that someone could read through and pull out all the gems from in the course of 7 days, I could probably sell that for $100. Yes, I'm going to have to finesse the content and rework it. But some of the best books in my field, people, Marty Kagan is like a very notable, Teresa Torres, very notable like product coaches in the industry of product management. They wrote blogs for years and then took them and packaged them into a book. It's the same thing. And they sold the book, but it's the same thing. Marty didn't start writing chapter 1 from scratch. He took all his existing content and tweaked it and manufactured it to be book ready. So I think like the easiest thing to do is to just sell the stuff that you're already creating. Premium subscriptions to a newsletter, email-based courses, those are like some of the simplest formats that I'm aware of.
Yeah, that's brilliant advice. You already built them. You just have to, as you mentioned, maybe tiny bitty something change here and there and package it nicely. And there you go. And another thing that you mentioned there about blogs and books. A lot of books indeed out there are just literally the blogs those thought leaders write over the years and package it in another format that is much more easier to digest. And man, I'm such a fan of email education courses. I actually advise most of my clients that it's relevant for them to use as a lead generator, not to sell it, but some of them actually use a paid lead generator, like it's very low ticket. If they already get their email out, they'll get the card out, and after that, you'll probably buy the higher ticket. But providing value over a couple of days rather than throwing an ebook or something that people don't consume, they just download, is such an underrated way. Imagine they miss probably one of 2 emails, but they'll see the next one and they'll check the previous one then, and you have the call to actions then. And it's a small funnel that can generate revenue for a long time, and you build it once. And you mentioned that the way you build your former and still active products, the toolbox, what they're planning to do right now, because I know that you're working on something.
So that company, New Haircut, still exists, like you said. It's tough. When people buy those toolkits, I'm so tempted to go back into them and to improve them, to make them better, to add new ones. Like I have all these ideas, but what's stolen my heart is this new business that I'm working on called Passive Profits, which is really just what I've done is I've productized the process of productizing. So a little bit meta. So like that whole journey and like sort of mindset shift that I had with my consulting business, going into like public training and then turning the training into toolkits and like actionable resources, that whole process and what I learned about, I already am a marketer. Everything that I've ever done is all self-taught. I've learned how to sell. I've learned how to build products. I've learned how to create content. I've learned to distribute it. I've learned to build an audience so that you could bring people into the top of the funnel from LinkedIn. I've been an entrepreneur for 15 years and I've learned so much. And there's like the piece in there about productizing your expertise and selling it in formats that don't require you to show up and eventually probably hit burnout. I just want to help other people have that same thing. I think there's millions of experts in the world that are wondering, do I have to stay in my job? Can I retire a little bit early? Will I be able to afford college? Will I be able to spend more time with my kids? I'm getting older. I don't want to work as much. All that stuff is such like basic human needs and dreams. And I think packaging and productizing and figuring out different ways to earn income, having like multiple income streams. And I just want to help people be in a position that they can spend more time in their lives. It's what I'm actively trying to do. I went through like a divorce. I like lost my business partner. Like I had a whole string where I was like really in the gutter. And a lot of it I can blame on working too much in my business. And I don't know, that sucked. And I would like to think that I can help people and individuals not only avoid a lot of that crap, but also like get to live more of their life. And I think like packaging and productizing and digital products, I think they offer a path to do that. So I want to help people figure that out.
That's amazing. When you help someone avoid the things that you went through and actually showing how you solve your own problem, it's not only the easiest way to help others, but as well the smarter way to go about it. What's more easier to do than just showing what worked for you and avoiding what you went through? Someone might listen to you and was like, I relate with Jay. I'm in the same situation. I want to do so for my own life, and I want to get rid probably of this job or for this still trap into execution mode that I'm currently in. What would be a single step for them to take in 1 week in order to get there?
I think there's some real gold in getting in front of other people and teaching them a thing that you know. And it doesn't need to be that you build this massive online course and you build a landing page for it and you build up an audience. I think if you can get a group of 10 people in front of you in a webinar, people have like very strong reactions to webinars. They're either like, yeah, I'm willing to do it, or hell no. And I think that's something that you should look at, because people appreciate newsletters, but we're still humans and we still want to, especially like with all the AI and all of the mass produced content and ghostwriters, I think it's never been a more important time to get in front of people. You don't have to like, in real life events are definitely becoming like, they're becoming popular, which is insane. But just letting people hear your voice and see you and ask you questions in a live format, if you can do that in a 45-minute, 1 hour long webinar, you don't even have to sell anything at the end. Like, just get used to take a block from your lunchtime, tell your boss you're unavailable for an hour, and organize a webinar and teach people a thing that you're actively doing today. If there's one thing I could do different from 15 years ago when I started my business, I would have started selling myself and the things that I knew how to do before I left my corporate job. Because the thing that I was blind to, a real blind spot for me, was I'm working at Accenture, I'm working with Verizon, Bloomberg, all these like massive companies. Those are all huge platforms. And for you to say, hey, today I'm working on a product for Google, these are the things that I'm doing, this is the team that I'm meeting, this is how I ran the meeting with 3 executives from Amazon. Like, those are all things that people would love to hear about. Lenny Rachitsky runs Lenny's newsletter, and like his big growth lever was just talking about the work that he did inside of big companies. So use those platforms while you have them, find 1 hour, and just bring people inside of the world of what it looks like to be at the level you're at today. And remember what we were talking about earlier. You're a director today. You're a director of product today. And there's someone that's a manager or a junior product manager or something like that. And they're wondering what it's like to do that job for like massive companies and be in front of a global CEO. That's a webinar. That's a thing that you show people what you're doing. And what you're doing for yourself is you're learning how to get people to say yes. So you're selling and asking people to give you 1 hour of their time. And then you're learning how to present, you're learning how to tell stories, you're learning how to take people on a journey where you talk about something that was uncomfortable that you learned, and they come out of it with some new insights. That takes work, it takes practice, but it's definitely something you could fit in on your lunch break without leaving your job.
Absolutely. And the thing is that most of those in that situation already have the skill to do so, because they actually hold presentation in front of those CEOs or team members and so on. And a webinar is not different than that. Of course, it's a bit different because you talk alone in front of the camera, but there are people listening and watching you, the same like in a meeting room. And those presentation skills that you have in your corporate job or with your clients or customers, you can apply the same skills by holding a webinar. And we live in an interconnected world where you can actually get in front of thousands of people without you realizing, because you never know when you promote that thing and gets viral, and who knows. But that might be scary to have attending there a lot of people. But in the same time, if you practice these things, as Jay said, you take advantage of the platform that you're already on. and the skills, the lesson that you teach others every single day. And what can be better than that to practice your thing and package it at some point. Where those listening can reach out to you if they want to check out your newsletter and what you're working on or partner with you.
My website is yourpassiveprofits.co. That's where I write my newsletter. I'm really active on LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn to teach people how I am productizing my expertise, and people use that to do it for themselves. And I'm also launching a tool. We're recording this in May 2024. So I'm launching a tool at the end of the month, which will help people figure out the topic and the product that they have in them that they could monetize and start to earn income from. So I'm really excited about that one. I'll announce that on LinkedIn and through my newsletter.
Yes, you're one of the few that stick to the end. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing so. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so below. And if you got any value from this, please share it with a friend. They might got some value from it as well. Thank you so much, and until next week, pura vida!